Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome. On the Women's Connection website, we have an article called Empowerment, written by my guest here, Carol Drinkwater. She's going to talk to us about what empowered her to write this article and a couple of books that she's written. She is an author and an actress. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you very much.
You wrote the article, The Empowerment, for the website. What inspired you to write this article?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that the idea of empowerment, or indeed change through a process of either pain or something that has happened in our life that can go against us unless we look at our lives positively, is one of the issues that I always look at in my books, both for adolescents and for women. I think also as an actress, I always look for how I can find a story that I tell of the woman that I'm playing about what her journey is, where she begins and where she goes to. And so I see the idea of empowerment about any person's journey through life, that we can start at a certain place. There are always difficulties, it doesn't change, and that at some point we can decide to take on board everything that hits us in our life and say, okay, I'm going to use this to make me stronger, to make my life more positive, and to look at what I call the cup being half full and not half empty.
Well, you did an excellent job in your second book, this Olive Season, which is your second of the trilogy.
That I call my Olive Trilogy, yes. The first book is called The Olive Farm, and the second one that's just come out is called The Olive Season, yes.
The book is like a catharsis for you.
Quite a lot of people have asked me that question, and I don't actually know yet. Normally one would say that if you write about something, then it gets it out of your system. They're a love story told over 3 books. They're a love story which exists on 3 levels, really. It's a love story about myself and a man that I met, and I live with him in France, in the south of France, in Provence. It's a story about my falling in love with Provence, about the area, the colours, the people, the food, everything about that area that invited painters to go down there and write, and that makes it such a wonderful area. And it's also about the fact that when we bought this old farm, it was a ruin. We had no money. We've done it against all odds. Again, another challenge, another empowering experience. But when we actually cut back the land, because there's 10 acres there, we discovered that we had 64 400-year-old olive trees.
Oh, how beautiful.
They're amazing. And you couldn't see them. It was such a jungle when we bought the place. And then I started looking at these trees and I watched the fruit falling, and I thought to myself, I must do something with this. And slowly I have learned to become an olive farmer, and we now have some of the finest olive oil in the south of France. And we've just planted another 200 trees. So we're getting quite serious about this. So the books are about, in many ways, the books are about small journeys and longer journeys and areas of love story that exist on many levels. One of the main strands or threads through the second book, The Olive Season, is that I get pregnant. I've already had several miscarriages. I lose the child while I'm away filming in England, and then I discover that I can't carry a child full term. And I think for any woman that's a tragedy and something very hard to come to terms with. And I think perhaps for someone who has lived in the public eye and has been and is an actress, and once upon a time for a series called All Creatures Great and Small that I was rather famous for, I was tagged the actress who brought sex appeal to Wellingtons. So, you know, even if it's just sex appeal to Wellingtons, at some level, I thought of myself as being very womanly. So come to terms with the fact that you can't have children is a big issue and something that could bring you down. And my husband has twin daughters from his first marriage. So though that obviously I love these girls and they love me, but there was a time when I thought, you know, he's got kids, I haven't, and I began to feel resentful, I suppose, in a way, and I thought, and grieving very much for the child, the little girl that I'd lost. So I thought to myself, I have to find a way to take out of my life what's positive and change it and grow through this experience. And in fact, the celebration of nature down there, the trees, the fact that I've learned to farm the land, that we've planted new trees that will be there in 400 years when I'm not there anymore, just as the trees that are there now that we found are still, you know, maybe another young couple will come along then and find that hill and think, I'd like to farm here. So I will have given something, and I think that that's, in this book, part of the journey that's empowered me and shown me that, in fact, any negative experience can be turned into something positive. and joyful. I also think I have two little daily philosophies of mine. One is that if something happens, let's say that my car breaks down, for example, as happens, to any of us any day, then I think to myself, first of all, I kind of go, and then I say to myself, okay, I could have been hurt in the car, it could have been smashed up, I could have had an accident. So it's terrific that the car's only broken down. I look at it like that. The other thing that I do every day, and I've certainly done this since I lost the little girl in the olive season, I look for what I call my miracle of the day.
That's
and every
beautiful.
day when I go to sleep, just before I go to sleep, I lie in my bed and I close my eyes and I think to myself, okay, what was the miracle of today? And it can be something really simple. It can be 3 ducks that took off in front of a windscreen. It can be something I've seen outside the window of my olive farm from my writing room. It can be Michel telling me he loves me. It can be anything. It can be something enormous too. But every day I look for a miracle so that I go to sleep remembering the miracle of the day rather than the negatives. And that really, I've taught myself to do it. It was something that I decided after I lost the child that I needed to find for myself. And now I just do it automatically, and it really does make a difference.
How did you come to really get so involved in
It
farming?
was quite simply, Michel, who is my husband, who in the first book, The Olive Farm, he's not my husband. I met him in Australia. I was filming in Australia and he was the executive producer, and I hadn't met him before I had finished my filming. And then he called me for a hotel where I was staying, called my room and said, come and have a drink. And we had a drink. And then he said, you want to come and have dinner with me tomorrow? And I had dinner with him the next evening. And he asked me to marry him.
Wow.
And I thought, this Frenchman, I don't believe this. It just doesn't happen, does it? But I didn't say no. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. So the first book, The Olive Farm, is very much about us falling in love. It's about the discovery of each other, the discovery of the south of France, because then we began to see each other, obviously. And then about 6 months after we met, he said, I'm going to Cannes for the television festival, which precedes the film festival, and if you'd like to come and spend a week with me down there, that'd be great. And I said yes. And I'd been looking all over the world for what I described as my house by the sea, which was actually, I think, some kind of, in a way, it was almost a kind of romantic bubble that I kind of said I was looking for, and I didn't really believe I would ever find. It was really to heal various things in my life that I looked for that. But I think the thing, and I saw some great houses all over the world, but I think the thing that really brought it together was the person. And while Michel was doing business at the Cannes Television Festival, I thought, well, I'll look for my house by the sea down here. And I started looking, and I went into the estate agents in South France, and I said, bonjour, have you got anything, And they said, how much have you got to spend? And I told them how much, and they said, I'm sorry, we have nothing for that, madam. I said, well, I do know of this place that I'm not representing. I don't know who's representing it. It's a jungle. It's completely overgrown. It hasn't been lived in for 5 years. And we said, well, let's see it. And he took us up this winding drive on this hillside, and it was jungle either side. And we got up to the top, we stood on this terrace. It was very dilapidated, but you could see that it had been a very elegant house. And we stood on the top and we looked out over the Bay of Cannes and the Mediterranean Sea and everything. And I looked at it and he said, voila, olive grove vineyard. And we said, but where? You couldn't see anything. But we were crazily in love at that stage. We're still crazily in love. And we couldn't afford it. And Michel said, we can find a way. We're going to go for this. And we did, and it was waiting for us. I'm sure that it's been empty for 5 years, overlooking the Bay of Cannes, and I believe that God kind of said,
Right there.
That's for her. That one's for her.
How
She's looked
beautiful.
everywhere. And it's a wonderful relationship. I mean, there's obviously, like any relationship, there are tough times. And again, I think we empower each other. We give each other strength, and sometimes we need to be, because we have very separate lives in the sense that we both travel. So I think we find ways to make our separation something positive for us, and sometimes we don't. But I think that we do try to look for ways to empower each other, both professionally and personally. I think we both want each other to grow and be the people that we are, and that might mean that eventually we become two people that don't want to be together. I don't think that will be the case, but it could be.
What is the underlying basis for all this, that you have found this passion?
Well, first of all, there is the passion for the relationship and the man, and I also think part of the passion comes from the fact that my passion for nature very much comes from the fact, well, first of all, I'm a Taurus, so I'm a child of the earth. That's the kind of the flip answer. The more real answer probably comes from the fact that I actually had quite a traumatic childhood, quite a violent background in some ways, though I love both my parents very much. My father's now dead. But I think the fact that they were a post-war marriage and they struggled to stay together for the sake of myself and my sister, and sometimes it was quite violent and hard for them, I think made me think very carefully about getting married, which is why it took me so long to accept Michel in the first place, and also the fact that I wanted to create a place that is very much about beauty and about growth and about nurturing, which is another reason why not having children of my own was such a big blow, because that was part of the, was part of the kind of plan, was to have children so that I could give them what I felt that I hadn't had, which was this kind of nurturing background and much love and a sense of themselves and indeed the opportunity for them to empower themselves as they grow. And as I didn't have that with children, I think the place has become where I put my nurturing muscles, as it were, in my writing and the place. And it's very important to me to be surrounded by things surrounded by beauty, and beauty can take many forms.
But you never decided to adopt.
We thought about it, but Michel's got, as I said, two twin daughters from his first marriage, and they were growing by the time I discovered that in fact I couldn't carry a child full term. I was already kind of early 40s. So I think that we did talk about it. Michel said, if you'd like to adopt them, that's great, and I'm here for you. That can be the choice that we make. And I was traveling, I was working in Brazil with street girls for a while, and one of the girls who was pregnant for the umpteenth time said, you can have my child if you like. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. But it did make me start thinking maybe I should adopt a child from one of the countries where there were so many people living on the streets. And finally we decided that the life that we had was so itinerant and so all over the place that perhaps to take in a child who already had certain traumas of her own was perhaps difficult. And so finally I decided that the two girls that Michel's got were great, and they now have children of their own, one child each of their own. One's married to an American, has been living here in New York, just gone back to live in Paris now. So, I mean, the life and the family, the French world that's building up around me is wonderful, and I actually don't need anything else. I will always, of course, be sad that I don't have my own children, but that is a fact now that I've, if not finally accepted entirely, I know it will never change. I can't change it. And so I celebrate what I've got, and what I've got I think is amazing.
As an actress, you've come across some exciting roles, and some I'm sure you want to forget.
No. Do I want to forget any? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's a couple of actors I've worked with I'd like to forget, but we're not going there. I've worked with some great people. I've worked with Max von Sydow, who of course is the Swedish actor who worked with Bergman and was in The Exorcist and films like that. He and I did a film together in Australia for which we both won an Australian Oscar or whatever they call it over there. So that was great. We were 3 months together, and that was a very special experience. All Creatures Great and Small, which is the very famous English television series which plays on PBS here.
Right.
I played the vet's wife in that, and I did 42 episodes and 2 TV films. That's a very particular memory for me because it made me a household name in, well, almost worldwide, in fact, for a while. So, except in France. It's never played in France. It's the only country in the world, where it's never played. So that's very special for me. I wouldn't say there's any role that I want to forget.
Somebody wants to get into the business of...
Show business or writing?
Show business.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them?
Well, my first advice would be don't. Seriously, it would be don't. But if they say, but I'm going to, and I want to, and I have to, which is what you do have to say, really, then I'd say train, go to drama school, get yourself a good train. Get yourself your education. Go through your education first. Don't drop out of school. Get yourself a decent education because you'll need it later. I mean, when you're starting to look at scripts and things, to have some kind of, ground base from which you can take all your experiences, and that includes intellectual experiences. So I would say get a good education, then get trained, and then you have to learn to take every no that comes along, and there will be millions of them for everybody. I mean, I think from Meryl Streep downwards or upwards or whatever it is, there is always going to be no's, and I think you have to get used to the no's, brush yourself down, pick yourself up and get on with it.
It's empowering yourself.
Yes, you have to complete empowering yourself, because there are times, and particularly when you're younger and you're not used to that, when you just think, this is horrible, I can't stand it, I'm not going to continue. And if you can't continue, then you stop. That's why I say don't, because you really have to you have to be not only passionate, you have to be driven.
Really driven.
Really driven. And I'm driven both as an actress and a writer. And I think that in both those careers, unless you are, you can't get up every day and do what needs to be done because it's just too confronting. You know, it can be joyous, it can be wonderfully joyous, but it can also be very painful. But when it works, when it's good, it's fantastic.
What would you like to leave the audience with?
I think my thought, most importantly, will be to take care of yourself, believe in yourself, know that no matter how tough it gets out there every day, and there are times when you feel very alone and it is very tough, that there is love there for you, love for your, you know, that comes from within yourself, love from nature, love from God, if you believe in that, and look for that. Find the moments when life is telling you that, is showing you that it loves you, and I think one grows from that.
Thank you very much for joining me, Carol.
Pleasure.
And thank you. I hope you gained some empowerment to use in your life. Stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with another episode on The Woman's Connection. Trained as a classical pianist for 12 years and conducted major biomedical research in AIDS, she felt there was something missing in her life. And did she ever find something different? She went from an indoor career to an outdoor lifestyle. And with me is Marla Strab, and I'd like to welcome you.
Thanks for
Welcome.
having me.
What made you change such a drastic 180-degree lifestyle?
Well, there were a few things. I toured Europe on a bicycle when I was about 24. I met this guy and we decided to go on this huge adventure, and I realized touring Europe that my life didn't have to be the American dream. You know, there are so many other possibilities. And there were some other problems too with my life. You know, I was very rebellious at that time because my brother had died a few years earlier, and this is the way that I had to deal with it by breaking the law and partying too much. And you know, I was in my early 20s. I was getting a little bit crazy, and just things were happening to me to make me continue to question a conventional lifestyle. Even though I got a master's degree in marine biology and everything was on track to have a great career in science, I still questioned just you know, living my life the way I'm expected to live it.
Well, now you're a famous downhill racer. How did that really come about?
Well, when I was 28 years old, which was actually a little bit late to become a professional athlete, I was commuting to work to San Diego in California by bicycle. And basically, I started making my commutes longer and longer to work because I found that part of my day was the most satisfying part of the day. And even though I was trained in science and I really enjoyed the science, I found it to be a little bit troubling, the animal research that we were having to do with the monkeys and a few other things. And I found like I could really get out my aggressions hammering up these mountains in the mud, you know, on my bike in the morning, and you know, going breakneck speeds against traffic and you know, amongst the cars, and I found myself daydreaming about cycling while I was in the laboratory. And I thought, you know, it's really late in life to do something like this, and everybody is telling me not to do it, but I'm just going to take a chance and quit this job and start racing mountain bikes because it was kind of exploding at the time.
You went against the trend, especially with your parents. How did they react to this?
Well, my parents, they didn't understand because, you know, they're from a very traditional upbringing, and you know, I was expected to live the life of a conventional woman, get married, have kids, get a good job, and you know, not ride my bicycle for a living at 40, 50 miles an hour every day. And you know, this scared them. The death of my brother really took a toll on my parents. So they've always been incredibly overprotective now, especially since that.
And you're a girl, which makes them
Yeah,
even more protective.
And I'm the only girl in the family. I have 4 brothers. I was a bit of a tomboy, but I was the little girl of the family. So they wanted to, you know, they wanted to shelter me a little bit more. So it was tough when I moved out to California when I was 26, 27 with this guy I met, this same boyfriend. I still date the same guy. When we moved out west and I started doing this extreme sport. They thought it was crazy. And all that money wasted on education, they thought. But really, it hasn't been wasted. I've really incorporated my science background into training. The physics of riding a bike is, very, very helpful to understand.
Well, let's talk about that, because you train how many hours a day?
4 hours a day.
4 hours a day.
And usually there's about an hour or two of prep and then repairs to the broken equipment. But so it can be a good part of the day.
All right, well, let's talk about your diet. What
Okay.
kind of a diet do you practice?
Well, I used to be crazy. I was neurotic. I was obsessed when I first turned pro. I mean, I was, as I said, later in life, I wanted to almost overcompensate for my age. So I thought, okay, I have to be a vegetarian. I have to quit drinking, which I did, and drugs, which I did. But I took it way too far. I mean, no meat, no fried foods, and actually I lost too much weight. So my coach suggested that I should eat protein at every meal, and in the form of animal protein. So once I did that, I gained 15 pounds, and I was so much stronger as a result. And now I really believe in a balanced diet. Every meal, I try to have quite a bit of protein in every meal. Especially as an athlete, your muscles are always breaking down. So,
Besides training on the bike for 4 hours a day, do you do any other exercise?
oh yeah, I'm a perhaps compulsive exerciser. But no, if I can't ride on the bike, then I'll go for a run. I'll go to the gym. I'll do anything, hiking. Sometimes I need a speed fix. Now
What's
this sounds
that?
crazy, but that's not the kind of speed you're thinking of. It's if I have to get on a motorcycle and go 70, 80 miles an hour, then I can fall asleep at night because I'm relaxed, because I got it out of my system for the day. So now that's not really exercising, but I like to have a bit of adrenaline every day.
How do you incorporate your research into what you're doing?
Well, my science background really comes in handy.
And in what way?
Well, because for training, I have a training diary that I've kept for 10 years, and I haven't missed a day.
Oh my God.
So, and this really helps me, because it's a great template for how to train in the future, to find out what I did wrong. In some cases, maybe 3 years ago, find out why I got sick, and you can look at the patterns. And then I also use my science background to, as far as learning about the engineering of the bike, the physics of a jump, and then just basic physiology to understand my body better. It helps that I used to teach human anatomy and physiology at a college. So I think I can understand how it works in a lot of ways.
Okay. How do you turn pro?
Well, to turn pro anything, basically you just learn a lot about the organizations that govern the sport. So for mountain biking or for cycling, all you have to do is actually walk into a bike shop and ask people in the bike shop, how do I find a local race? And basically you just start working your way up the ranks. You start as a beginner, you ride a lot actually, and then you try to learn about how the racing system works in this country. And so to turn pro, basically it's a matter of sending in kind of a resume to the organization. And in my case it's NORBA, which is USA Cycling Organization. And say, here are all my results from this many years of racing. I think I'm ready to be a professional. And I'm serious, and I want to be pro. So it's really just a matter of learning about your sport.
You also have a cycling team. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I race on a mountain bike team, and it's an all-women's mountain bike team, and it's called the Luna Women's Mountain Bike Team. And basically, it's a world-class team. As a racing team, we try to raise awareness for women in cycling and also for the Breast Cancer Fund. So it's kind of a feel-good team.
Now, how many people are on your team?
There are 4 other women on my team, and all world-class.
And how many races do you compete in a year?
We race, usually we're contracted to race 16 races a year, and that starts from March to about September, October. And this is all around the world. We race Japan, we race Africa, Australia. It's a serious sport, much more so than most Americans would understand. In Europe, cycling is like our Super Bowl. It's like football.
I wrote a book, The Life Story of a Downhill Gravity Goddess.
That's right. Yeah, I mean that's
And
a
you're
little tongue in cheek there, but It's a kind of late coming of age book. It's a very unconventional story, and I wrote the book, and you know, someone sort of coerced me to write it, and I'm so glad I did now. It was very therapeutic, and basically it was about how I turned pro at a late age, and the fact that I really tried to do something that was actually quite crazy, and I did it. So I'm actually the oldest professional racer to win a World Cup at the old age of 38, and I just won a World Cup this past season.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, so we're constantly proving that you know, the older you get, sometimes the better you get.
What advice would you like to give somebody who would like to start a career in mountain bike racing?
Well, my advice is just have fun, and don't worry about if you're older, if you're, you know, if you're crippled, if you have any kind of disabilities. It's still the kind of sport that anybody can do. As long as you're having fun, you can ride a bicycle. If you can remember how to ride a bicycle, then you can do it. And it's a lot of fun, and I recommend people to try it.
Thank you very much.
It was good to meet you.
Thank you, same here.